Some people say that cancel culture isn't real, or it's necessary to do it to people. And this is always from the people invested in getting other people canceled. They say they have to be called out when they have committed injustice. And thing is, almost everyone agrees that people who break the law should be called out. But it's become clear to the vast majority of people that canceling others without evidence, with viciousness, perhaps without knowing the person or knowing the full story, and with a sense that one's own opinions are the only important ones, that's an injustice in its own right. It's less about trying to make the world wonderful than it's about plain old emotional dysregulation. And for several reasons, the number of emotionally dysregulated people and the intensity of the way they express themselves has ratcheted way up. And I think most people can see that. And I think it has to do with trauma. Trauma in the people attacking others and indifference or numbness to the trauma that the attack causes to other people. Now, I've often said that rage is a way that many people self-medicate depression. Hating people, believing that really complicated issues that have been debated for decades or centuries have just one right answer, and anyone who disagrees or doesn't get it is stupid and evil. This is kind of an electrified state. It's a kind of elation, almost like religious fervor, that can contradict the evidence of your eyes and your ears and your experience. And that electric energy feels infinitely better than being frozen and hopeless and depressed. And yes, many of us are victims of injustice. Many of us have been harmed, but not everything that happens in cancel culture is related to things that actually happen. We have to know the difference. So there's way too much of this going around. Now, I work with a lot of people with trauma symptoms, and what I notice is that traumatized people are often drawn to black and white thinking, like extreme categorizing of people into these, these people are good, these people are bad, and it's like 100%, 100%. And at the same time, the level of fear that people feel about expressing themselves, if they're in any way non-conforming with those who are energized by publicly attacking people, they're experiencing a chronic, intense stress and suppression that's very much like growing up with an abusive parent, like the drill sergeant archetype who says, get down, lay face down. If you move, I'll kick you. And if you tell anyone I'll kick you, I'll hurt you so bad you won't even know what happened. That kind of mental abuse has been happening on a large scale. And what I see now is that people who were bullied into conformity are starting to sneak out the back door, so to speak, so that they can be themselves again, so that they can express themselves, so they can be honestly themselves, which, if you think of the history of people in the world being forbidden to be themselves and what that did to their spirit, the need and freedom to be oneself is a condition of trauma healing. Now, rushing in to destroy the reputation of our fellow human beings, especially when we're relying on rumors or, just crap people say, or worse, knowing that something that you're saying is exaggerated or false, but saying it anyway because of the way it makes you feel, that has a name. It's called calumny. And centuries ago, it was considered a grave sin, and it is a grave sin. But it's done quite casually these days by too many people. Now, I heard someone say once that trashing people online in that casual way is like a video game. And I would say, it's a game created by narcissists, where everybody starts with, let's say 100 points. And you win by going around and attacking other people's reputations and demanding that other people hate them and then wrecking that person's livelihood just so that you can look important and good in the eyes of other narcissists whose supply comes from winning this game. Now, when people recover from participating in canceling others, their conscience comes alive and causes them to stop what they're doing. This is often what they describe. They say it's easy to chime in when people are trashing others because you can do it without using your real name. Nothing you say has to be true or provable. And because people are so terrified of being noticed by others who do this, no one will come after you. No one will stand up for people that you hurt if you do this, because the fact is, standing up for anyone who gets attacked will automatically make you the person who now gets attacked. You become the target, and that's no good. If you want to be spared, they would require that you have to join the attack. Now, who doesn't want to win such a high-stakes game? It's like the mafia, which is real, or it's like vampires, which is a metaphor, and it's very much a cult in the sense that you cannot disagree, and once you participate even a tiny bit and take your little allotment of 100 points, you're pressured hard to keep going forever, because there's no one a cult hates worse or hurts more than a cult member who quits. And you see this in extreme religions. You see it in industries where a lot of power and money is being traded, like Hollywood or DC. And you see it in families where there's a tyrannical, narcissistic parent controlling what everybody can say or believe. And so it's like, oh, your mom does not use drugs, or if she did, it's because of you. And so everyone goes along with it outwardly, but inside, unable to talk about your suffering or acknowledge the truth, your spirit gets gradually destroyed. And that's why I say that these blind kind of mob attacks, contempt prior to investigation, is narcissistic abuse. And getting approval for hurting people feeds that. If they can get some flying monkeys on board, those are the people who help the narcissist go do the petty attacks. Well, if they can get people to help them with that and to back them up, they can say anything they want about other people. It doesn't even have to be true. Because everybody knows the rules now. If you stand up for an attacked person, you get attacked. And that is what the vicious gossip wants, because that is their supply. So they need people to fall into their traps. Now, for people who were traumatized as kids, that threat that you will lose everything, that everyone will abandon you and attack you, and that you'll lapse back into the impoverished and isolated circumstances of your past is so terrifying and coercive that you might be tempted to just go along with it, or keep your head down, say nothing, or go into denial about the real nature of what you're living through. But shutting down what you really know and getting high on hate, it's kind of like a crime spree, right? Once you get started, it gets harder and harder to stop. And the cost of stopping gets higher and higher. And your thinking gets more and more distorted. The strength to do anything about it starts draining away. So again, I want to just say that by cancel culture, I'm not referring to the legitimate bringing to light or prosecution of someone who has committed a crime. And that's real. And though there's often a cult around that too, that's meant to protect the abuser and weaken anyone's power to call it out. Hello, Jeffrey, you know who. It must be called out. But cancel culture is not about crimes. It's about vague things, opinions, things that are essentially perceived differences in values or identity or affiliations. Like, oh, you're not like me, then, therefore, you must be evil because I'm good and everyone who agrees with me is good and anyone who's different is evil. Unless they make me look like a good person. So I got a letter a while back from a viewer who described what it's like to be sucked in with a mob. And she was really struggling, and she was overwhelmed with anxiety because she had the courage recently to exit the cult of cancelers. And she had seen my video on opinion bullies, and it snapped her out of the bad dream of what she had been doing. She had participated for a long time in a group of people who systematically went around and actively sought to destroy the reputations of real people, publicly and online. And she said that the group of friends that she'd fallen in with operated basically like a gang. They were seeking people that they could cancel, seeking them out. And she said at first that participating felt like they were doing something good, and that these extreme accusations might not be true, but they were necessary to stop some greater evil in the world and to protect innocent people who would otherwise be harmed. And I think that's how all narcissistic cults get started, right? It might be false, it might be wrong, but it's because we're actually the good guys and we're saving the world. So a lot of people can get hooked in on that good motive, and then later they find out that they've been dragged into a bad motive and a bad result. Now, most people who participate in this kind of thing are under the influence of a charismatic leader. They might not know the leader personally, and there's a big group identity, or they might just be following this person online, looking desperately just for anything that sounds powerful, that sounds like it could lift up their lives into something more meaningful, less depressed, less empty, more important. Now, a lot of people don't feel they have that. And there are, resentful narratives all around us. And there always have been in every culture in the world. If it's not the Catholics, it's the Jews, it's the black people, it's the white people, it's conservatives, it's progressives, it's the rich, it's the poor, it's Americans who are stupid. No, it's the foreigners. We have some deep wiring that makes it possible for us to hate. And if nothing stops it, it's like a train that's on a slight downslope and loses its brakes. So first you barely notice it, but then it starts going a little faster, and then a little faster, and then it's really too late to stop it. And what happens? You know what happens. The train ultimately goes to one place, to division and war and worse. And it has happened virtually everywhere at some point. And we are not special people who are immune to it. Human psychology makes us vulnerable, and the power of malignant narcissists just gathers momentum. When no one stands up, it's a runaway train. It takes out everything in its path. Well, my letter writer said that at first participating in canceling other people didn't seem like it would get bad in any way. It was like a high, and it took a lot of courage for them to admit this. It made her feel right, like she was someone on a mission, maybe better than other people because of this very important mission. But as things had turned out, she became aware of this tremendous shame inside about what she'd done to people. And she said that after a little while, on that high, she started to come down. And so she had to keep participating, or all that good feeling would just go away. And then it got still worse than that, where she had to keep participating or her friends would turn their destruction on her. So first it was peer pressure, and then it was something even worse than that, like being a hostage, really, and having to go along with the lie to keep upping the ante and saying more and more outrageous things, or she knew that she would be next. But my letter writer hit a limit one day, and I'm so proud of her. She got out. She cut all ties. She became very isolated, and she felt scared. And at first, she could see that canceling people was wrong, but she said she couldn't really see the truth of the people who had been hurt. And she told me that gradually she could see that the targets of the attacks weren't really anything like they had been made out to be, like what they had been attacked for. So my letter writer described what it was like to gradually awaken to the truth that not only were the attack claims that she'd made herself were unfair, but they were insane. And the justification in her mind was imagined. It was made up. And then it got more vicious, and the thought of getting out became harder and harder because of the probably real fear that the attackers would do all they could to damage any of the members who tried to leave. Now, I don't think that's unrealistic. So after my letter writer got out, she was trying to fly below the radar for a while, like Leah Remini or Salman Rushdie, if you know what I mean. Did this person feel better? Yes and no. Yes, because when you make a decision to stop participating in evil, there is a peace that comes over you. A spiritual breeze blows through that inspires and calms and clarifies things. But my letter writer was going through anxiety, waiting any moment to be targeted if she so much as liked a comment or said the wrong thing at work. There was a feeling that her former friends were somehow listening all the time, hanging over her, just waiting to pounce at the slightest move. And it got so she was afraid to leave her home. And I'd have to say this feeling sounds familiar. It sounds like complex PTSD after abuse that goes on and on and on. To have immobilizing fear that you're never safe and that people are going to come after you just for speaking, just for feeling a certain way, just for being who you actually are. It sounds at first like paranoia, right? But is it? The old gang actually might come, or they're flying monkeys, the people addicted to the game of hurting people. Now, whether they are narcissists or they are the ideological hostages of the narcissist, it's time for all decent and fair people to stand up to dismantle this game. So what do? First, we stop participating in the public shaming of anyone who stands accused of something that we have not personally witnessed or done our due diligence to verify from multiple sources, not just the usual gossips and anger junkies out there. It's important to determine whether this accusation is even true. And even if it is, you don't have to repeat it. Verify it, and then if you find you must say something, especially online or in some public way, use the advice of Socrates and ask yourself, is it true? Is it kind? Or is it necessary? Now, most of what you hear against others is outrage porn. And make no mistake, it's not just there to drive revenue and ratings. It is there for that, but mostly it's there to divide. Division is profitable. Divided people can be more easily manipulated. If you do one thing for your community, be a healer of division, not a divider. You do this by staying honest. Ask yourself, why do I want to casually repeat this attack on another person, or an organization, or a government office, or a country, or an ethnic group, or any kind of person out there? What do I get out of slandering them? If we're honest, it's a little hit of false self-esteem, false importance. It's the thing that you get out of putting other people down. It's like crack, it's like meth. It's a high that's cheap and it won't last and it ruins everything. With CPTSD, anything that lifts our energy, that focuses our minds a little bit, it feels like empowerment. Even hate, lashing out, it can feel like release, when really it's usually just emotional dysregulation. And the people who engage in this are often people bearing the wounds of past trauma. But even if that's true, it's no excuse for the violence that they're doing to the social fabric. If something bothers you about the way other people live their lives, or how they think or believe, or how you think they think, and how you believe they believe, talk to them. Be a human. Read books. Read things that have a different point of view than your usual news source. Find out why people have different opinions. And sure, there are occasionally people who really are up to no good. It's true. But in most cases, they just see things a little differently than you. Mostly everyone wants the same things. They want the same things for themselves and their families and their communities. And it's the good things. Most people really do want that for everybody. The differences lie in how we all think that we should achieve those good outcomes. And people very rightly have different opinions. What's the right way to raise children? What's the right way to be healthy? What's the right thing to do about injustice in the world? What's the right way to heal childhood PTSD, for that matter, huh? The answers to these are complicated. And if they were as simple as just doing things the way you think they should be done, they'd be solved by now. They're complicated. They are deep-rooted. They are debatable, and all progress depends not on some decree that silences people and threatens their livelihood and crushes their spirit, but on a free-flowing stream of ideas and expression and learning and debate. There is room for everyone in this stream of collective consciousness here. Perfect agreement is not a requirement. And in fact, requiring perfect agreement is the nature of evil itself. It's what totalitarianism is. It's what drives cancel culture. It's the lifeblood of the narcissist, too, by the way. Good, orderly direction tends to arise through inclusivity and free expression. So stand up for those who are silenced. Speak up when you see injustice. Speak truthfully and take care that your passion for truth doesn't cause you to be blinded to demand that other people see your truth too. There's room for your views and there's room for their views. And yes, there are costs to this, but think of the alternative. Think of the alternative. Making room for differences is how the best societies have thrived. Some of you will hear what I'm saying and you'll try to attack me, or you'll project that I am saying this to join you in hating your enemies. But you're wrong. The enemy is within. We're all vulnerable to doing this. So if you got caught up in harming others in this way, it's never too late to step back. Step back. Do it quietly at first if you have to get your head clear. Get support. If you know someone who's been attacked in this way, offer them a hand. Have their back. Speak up when others get slandered. And I hope this never happens, but if you get attacked, speak up and say what you believe is true and right. Because yes, there is risk involved, but when enough people speak up together, that risk is spread out. We share it, it's distributed. It makes it safe for other people to speak up too. And this is what a healthy culture looks like. And not coincidentally, what healing from trauma looks like, where every man, every woman is free to express who they are. Now, they might not always be pleasant, they might not always be right, and they're definitely not free to commit crimes, but they can think for themselves. And no other situation and no system that doesn't allow that can possibly lead to anything good. I want to leave you with a vision of what it looks like when trauma-driven behaviors no longer control you. And yes, participating in harming others in this way is a trauma-driven behavior. So I have for you, it's a list of signs that your healing is already beginning. It's already taking place. And a lot of people find this very helpful. It's nice to check off the boxes and go, this is going very well in my life, even if this part isn't yet. You can download this right here, and I will see you very soon.